Tonight, we're opening with a dramatic shake-up inside the People's Democratic Party at this weekend's national convention in Ibadan. PDP delegates passed a sweeping motion to expel several high-profile members, including Wike, the FCT minister, former Ekiti State Governor of Ayoshe, Senator Samuel Anyanwu, the party's suspended national secretary, and others. The PDP says these expulsions were for anti-party activities and for causing disunity through litigation. At the same time, they dissolved party structures in several states, including Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Imo, and a couple of others, signaling what many say is a bold and controversial move to reset internal power centers. But what was supposed to be a high-stakes gathering to elect new party leadership turned into a courtroom flashpoint. That's because 3 different courts issued contradictory rulings. Some stopped the convention altogether, while another allowed it to proceed. One Abuja court halted INEC from monitoring or recognizing the outcome, saying the PDP had failed to follow due process. Then, in a separate case, we saw Justice Peter Lifu of another Abuja High Court barring the convention unless Sule Lamido, a former governor, was allowed to buy a nomination form for national chairman. Yet in Ibadan, few hours to that exercise, and Oyo State High Court gave the PDP a green light again to go ahead, ordering INEC to attend, monitor, and observe. So to help us make sense of this legal and political moment, what it means for internal party democracy, the rule of law, and PDP's future, I'm joined by political analyst and legal practitioner Liberus Oshoma, who joins me live from our Abuja studio. Mr. Oshoma, thank you for joining us again on Beyond the Headlines. Very interesting development we're following here. As mentioned, we had conflicting rulings and Oyo State High Court allowing the convention, ordering INEC to monitor, versus a federal High Court restraining INEC because of Lamido's exclusion. How do such conflicting court orders happen, and which is likely to prevail in practice?
Yeah, Nifemi, thank you, and thank you to our viewers. And it is sad that once again, the PDP, a party that was formed sometimes in August 1998, with various associations and organizations, political parties, coming together, sheathed their sword, and decided to come together to pursue an agenda for a better Nigeria. We're represented by about 34 members. You have the Bamanga Tukos, the Tony Aneni, even including the Sule Lamido that you mentioned, late Sunday Awoni, Solomon La and Co., Alex Ekweme, coming together to bet what is today known as PDP. But unfortunately, typical of Nigerian politicians, we'll find out that their exit from power had consistently, created problems for them. Thanks to also the flip-flop and the ping-pong rulings that we had seen. It's almost, somebody described it as acquired rulings from the judiciary, but I wouldn't want to use such words. We saw this in 2015, immediately after their exit from office. It was as if the PDP never prepared for life outside office, where you had Abuja High Court and the same Wike, Port Harcourt High Court. Today, Abuja will give judgment in favor of the Modu Sharif faction, and then tomorrow, another court will give judgment in favor of the McAfee-led faction until the McAfee-led faction prevail at the Supreme Court. And today, if you remember, was it Segun Adeniyi, former spokesperson of the president of Nigeria, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, did in his book made mention of the 1992 presidential election, where governors were in Abuja. The moment Justice Ikpeme gave that order, other governors were calling. Remember then you had governors who were already sworn in, and then you had a military rule at IBB. And so all of those governors were calling their state chief judges to also give counter orders, calling the attorney general to go file motion. So what the picture he was trying to paint then was that some of these orders can be procured. So in the same vein, today we see 4 cases altogether. You had 3 FCT, and then the Oyo State where the convention was to hold. I would have been shocked if a high court in Oyo would not give a judgment. And typical, that one came last. It came on Friday, and then the convention held on Saturday. So you would say when the equities are equal. Here, what you have is that when judgments are given, you say the last in time. Unlike when the equities are equal, you say the first in time. So you would say the last judgment gave them the go-ahead. Whether, considering the status of the other 3 ruling by the same court of coordinate jurisdiction, whether this action will be sustained beyond this is another different ballgame, which I wouldn't want to go into. If you remember also, this was the challenge that the APC had in Rivers State in 2015 or 2019, when a court did ask them not to conduct, primaries until congresses were concluded, and people who had applied to buy forms were allowed to purchase forms. At the end of the day, the court held that failure to allow them to purchase, forms was excluding them from the process, and that also led to the nullification of everything that had been done at those convention and primaries.
Yeah.
So also, lastly on this, there's this back and forth argument. A lot of people had argued that the Supreme Court had consistently held that the court should not interfere in parties' internal mechanism. No, the court had consistently held that the Supreme Court had held that the courts cannot appoint leaders for political parties. But in places where the constitution of the party spells out the steps, preemptive steps that should be taken before certain actions are conducted, the court had, not shied away in rising to the occasion to interpret, such steps and nullify, decisions taken when such steps are not, taken. Those preemptive steps are not taken. So in this case, I would say that the judgment in the ruling on Friday allowed the PDP convention. And so far, you can say that judgment subsisted. The convention is legal until, other judgments of the courts other decisions of the court would come up. Let's see what the Court of Appeal will say in all of that, and then eventually the Supreme Court. But I hate to say, this might be the beginning of the end of PDP.
I've also heard other people say that Sule Lamido's court case appears to be central to all of this. He's argued that he was denied a nomination form, and then Justice Lifu ruled in his favor, restraining INEC. What, in your opinion, are the implications of that for the legitimacy of the convention, especially with INEC's presence or absence at that convention?
You see, let's even take out INEC presence or absence in this case. Let's, like I referred to the case in Rivers State where I think it was Godwin Abe's supporter who approached the court against the APC then when Wike was governor in Rivers State for refusal to allow them purchase nomination, or that they purchased nomination but they were excluded from the primary process. So in the same vein here, and which was why the courts had their head. Mind you, before Lamido's case, the argument was that failure to hold world congresses in Anambra and I think a few other states in the Southwest was fatal to any convention that the PDP would hold. That all states, world and state congresses must be concluded before the convention can be held. That was the first judgment. And then Sule Lamido had signified his intention to purchase a form because the party had agreed on a consensus candidate. And Sule Lamido said he disagreed and that he had signified his intention to purchase a form, and he was refused. And so he approached the Federal High Court in Abuja. Justice Lifu did rule that he cannot be excluded from the process. Excluding him from the process and going ahead with it was a nullity. And their argument, like what we later saw, the intention was that, well, let's shut out Sule Lamido from the process and then go ahead, and then you can always go back to the court and say the horse has bolted. But the issue is there was a subsisting court order restraining the convention from going ahead on the ground of Sule Lamido's complaints. So whether the court in Oyo had also gone asked them to go ahead with the convention is a different matter altogether. It does not preclude Sule Lamido from continuing or concluding his case. And that Sule Lamido's case, like I said, because he also was not suspended, because the argument in most cases can be that once you are suspended from a political party, you no longer have the locus to challenge decisions of the party. So, but in the case of Sule Lamido, he is not suspended from the party. He remains a member of the party, even though he feels, bad, according to him, that he never imagined that the day will come when he will have to be suing PDP and requesting that the convention should not hold. But be that as it may, he's still a member of the party, and if he's not placated and he takes his matter to the highest level, that might affect whatever convention that had been held. And that's the court might eventually hold that PDP ought to obey a court order, no matter how no matter how they see the court order. I don't want to use the word that is coming to mind.
I hear you. Some political side talks say Sule Lamido's presence at one ADC meeting was the reason why they probably blocked him from getting the nomination form. But I want you to hear what the Adamawa state governor said at the ground of that convention, which brings to mind again precisely the position of the Electoral Act as to the presence or absence of INEC at such convention and what it means for its legality. Here's exactly what he said.
What we need is entrenched unity of purpose and better resolve and courage to soldier on beyond the election of our national officers. In the absence of INEC and as contend with merits of litigation for and against this convention, as the chairman, NCOC, it is not within my prerogative to go on with this exercise. It is for the delegates to decide. Thank you and God bless.
You heard him citing the multiplicity of litigations and indeed the absence of INEC as a reason why he wouldn't continue with that exercise. Some notable absence would also include the Rivers State governor and the governor of Plateau State, Governor Mutfwang. Both of them, Governor Fintiri and Mutfwang, have now reacted publicly, saying that they do not support the expulsion of those senior officers. But what is the position of the law? Because some have said INEC's absence means that what Makinde had in Ibadan was just a gathering of friends. How do you react to that?
Difemi, like I said, what I just hope and I pray that this does not signal the beginning of the end of PDP. A political party is a political party. It's not a political party until it is recognized by INEC and it is allowed to feed candidates by INEC. And that's why you find out that most times they always pander to the body language of INEC until INEC recognize, if you have factions in any political party, there's the tendency to always wait for INEC to issue a statement declaring which side they recognize. Before now, it was the prerogative of INEC to not just monitor, but to announce elected officials, until the court judgment in Ganifa Emi's case that said INEC's responsibility is just to monitor and not participate. So if INEC, if you're holding a convention and INEC is clearly absent in your convention, what it means, like some persons have said, considering the fact that there were court judgment, What it means is that truly it might end up as a gathering of just friends, or like some people describe it as a jamboree. But like I said, we'll wait to see if truly what the court will say. If the court, Justice Omotosho, Justice Lifo, and the court in Oyo, if what the Court of Appeal will say thereof, and what the Supreme Court will subsequently say. But I can tell you, sitting here, that the failure of INEC to monitor that process is fatal. It's fatal to the outcome at the end of the day. And we have seen it before. And that's why I am saying that I just hope that this is not the beginning of the end for the PDP. But one would expect ordinarily that INEC should not wait, would not wait for the political parties to go to court to litigate before giving direction. I also blame INEC here because I would have expected that INEC would sit down. Once there are issues like this, INEC should be able, INEC as a regulator should be able to sit down and spell out the guidelines for the political parties and what must be done, and not to wait for litigation and then you have to begin to wait for which judgment would come and which judgment wouldn't come. INEC failed in that responsibility because as a regulator, what's your responsibility? You wait, you fold your hands, the two warring factions are fighting, you have not said anything, you say, oh, go to court, and when the court rules, and that's what I will be. That's not the job of a regulator. The job of a regulator is to sit down, spell out the guideline that must be followed, and that must be strictly followed. And the failure to follow those guidelines, that way, INEC had declared a position ab initio, and everybody will fall into line. That will save all of this multiplicity of court action because the rules are clearly stated. But in a situation where INEC is waiting for the court to tell them what to do or what not to do, it also will not encourage, deepening our political democracy.
It may not be that simple for INEC because as we speak right now, the PDP faction that held the convention in Ibadan do not even have access to the national headquarters of the party in Abuja. Will INEC tell Wike and his people to vacate the national headquarters? You don't think that perhaps it's a court that can decide who truly is in charge where PDP is concerned as we speak?
No. In this case, first and foremost, when INEC asks to vacate, INEC will spell out the clear guidelines that must be followed before a national convention, even if they are stated in the Constitution and everybody knows what is INEC's position as regards the conduct of a national convention. Some persons are saying that ward and state primaries, congresses were not held in some states. What is INEC's position? Some of us who are knowledgeable and who have been following these things know. But how many people know? As INEC come out with a paper to say for Congress to be conducted or for convention to be held by any political party, these are the guidelines according to the rules of the political party. But in this case, I guess they also would not want to make such statements because they wouldn't want to shoot themselves in the foot, because if you bring out clear guidelines and another political party that you are leaning favorably, you are disposed to, also now flouts those guidelines, and then you do not say anything, then INEC becomes partisan. In this case, I think that even because what had happened clearly also has shown that there is a deep divide in PDP, that there is no way the court will not have stepped in. But for going ahead to conduct a convention, we won't be having this discussion if the INEC had clearly stated that, well, these are the guidelines. No matter what the court says, these are the guidelines that must be followed. And
let us talk about the expulsions for a minute. Wike, Fayose, Anyawu, quite a number of others expelled for anti-party activities. You know, some have said that perhaps it is coming too late, you know, depending on what your definition of anti-party is. Would you say that the timing, was it a function of what was done or the timing of it politically for the PDP?
I think that the expulsion of people like Wike and co from the party, you know, was long overdue. Some persons that were expelled from this party didn't do half of what Wike had done. You remember when Oshomole was suspended from his ward when he was national chairman of APC, and you know he wasn't up to this. But Wike had consistently played anti-party activities. had been the bone in the neck of his own political party, and yet he remains there. But even the way they had gone about it also clearly is wrong. I would have expected that they would go about this clearly, so as not to give the man Wike, a last laugh. But the way they had gone about it, it is obvious that it's a non-starter, because you are holding a convention that you have 4 judgments and 3 of the judgments are against you, and you went ahead to hold that convention. INEC is not there. It is in that convention that you are. I also would have expected that the expulsion should come from the ward level, where also at the end of the day, the Congress will what do you call it now, adopt what they had done at the ward level. But it is difficult for any ward chairman in Rivers State to say they want to expel Wike from the party. So that's why one would, they had to do it, at the national level, But I think, like I said, really, some of these persons, they played at the party activities enough in the party that if that party was truly up and doing, they have no business in the PDP.
Linked to that, however, is also, well, when you say they have no business, it's also a function of who runs the party, who has the real political clout, who has been winning elections. I heard Wike said the other time that these delegates were even talking about what is the PDP might in Lagos, who has really won election for the PDP in the past, 4 or 8 years. But we also saw at the PDP convention that the party structures in certain states were dissolved. In states like Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Enugu, Abia, it looks like an attempt to take back the party. But what is the party in Enugu, for instance, where Mr. Governor has gone to the APC, but we hear that he's still very much in charge within the PDP. What are the chances of the PDP taking back these structures? Because they don't seem to have presence. All the big individuals there are now, partying with the APC.
In the opposition?
Yes.
First and foremost, let's start with winning election. Nifemi, let's start with winning election. When these politicians talk about winning election, yes, you can say, not being a politician, they know how they play their game, but winning election, really, we know how elections are won in Nigeria. Once you are, in line or in tune with the party at the center, and then you have the financial war chest, it becomes very easy for you to manipulate the process. And once you manipulate the process, it's difficult for the courts, to look deeply into it, because the time is not there, coupled with the fact that the presumption of regularity is in favor of the conduct of the election. That said, so when people talk about, who is actually winning election, you can't say you're winning election and at the same time you are the pain in the neck of the political party. I also blame the people like Atiku Abubakar. After he left the PDP, he came back to the PDP, and after this presidential election in 2019, abandoned the PDP, went on exile. It was almost as if he was on sabbatical. He only comes to contest, and then left people like Wike to fund the party. And funding the party, certainly we own the structure. So that's why I can tell you that they were the one that won election. And then, now, his inability to also win the election in 2023, despite consistent pressure on him not to contest, and he went ahead to contest. And now, it is obvious that he certainly cannot even steer the ship of the party. Now he had left the PDP. He hasn't officially joined the ADC. And most of the governors are running away from the problem they created in PDP. And why they left, and Nifemi, I can tell you that all the governors that have left PDP quickly, I can tell you that they still control the structures of the PDP in their state.
Absolutely.
Until after the election. Because if you do not do that, the tendency for somebody to hijack that structure and use it to run against them will be very high. So that is why they still have interest there, and they want to control whoever is in that party. But the way Makinde and his people went about it certainly will not bring solution, because now you have multiplicity. I think they first and foremost need a reconciliation committee.
Yes. Good place to leave it, because we have completely run out of time. The Wike-led faction say they have called an emergency neck meeting for Wednesday. Perhaps we're also going to see some counter expulsion in the coming days. Interesting developments, and we'll stay on top of it. Thank you for talking to us, Liberals Oshoma, live from our studio in Abuja. Remember, you